and welcome to Chaotic Risk TV. My name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and this is episode 1, part 2 of our Big Bang review show. And what we hope to do here is shine a light on some albums that we think you need to know more about. And in this first episode, I chose Paul Gilbert's Dio album. Yes, that's right. This is what we're going to be talking about today. And in part 1 of this episode, we talked a little bit about who Paul Gilbert was. The fact that he first rose to fame with the Los Angeles-based band Racer X. Racer X was very much a metal band. There was no mistaking about it. Now, Racer X at the time, I remember living in Long Beach, California, where we had a metal station. It was just started to kind of become the thing. And KNAC was very big in the metal community. And Racer X, it was one of the few stations where you could hear a band like Racer X on metal radio. Now, again, Racer X was centered around guitarist Paul Gilbert, very much so. That like when I went to do some research, I checked out the debut album, Street Lethal by Racer X. You can go on YouTube, and it shows a picture of the album cover. It says Racer X featuring guitarist Paul Gilbert. So very much a guitar-oriented band centered around Paul Gilbert. Now, I got to be honest here. I cannot really name a single Racer X song, but you know what? I'm very aware of who Paul Gilbert is. And I got to tell you, when I heard that he was doing this Dio album, I got very excited because, like many of you, I'm a huge Ronnie James Dio fan. And I was interested to see how Paul Gilbert was going to choose to cover these songs. Because on past solo albums, he very much has done some vocals. He's one of those guys that he can kind of do it all if he wants. And when you're a guy like Paul Gilbert, that's the reason for releasing solo albums. You can kind of do what you want. And so I wasn't sure, but once I got the album, and I'm very glad I did, what this is really very much so is not only Paul Gilbert paying tribute to Ronnie James Dio, let's be honest, but it's basically what he's doing is he's put in his guitar parts where Ronnie would sing the vocal part. And it kind of, I just got to say, it's a new way of hearing these songs. He's not destroying the songs. These are classic songs. And I think if he was to kind of not only go and cover these songs, but kind of do it in a way that where he's kind of totally, destroying what they originally were and kind of really putting his own spin on it and it sounded nothing like the original tunes, I think people would not really be for that because let's be honest, Ronnie James Dio is very much a legendary artist. And so when paying a tribute to a guy like Ronnie James Dio, you got to do it in a masterful way. And Paul Gilbert really is a great guitar master. I mean, he's got a certain mastery to what he does. And I got to say, with the Dio album again, he really he puts his stamp on these songs, but he does it in a way where he's not destroying what the songs originally were. And so again, talking a little bit today in part 2 of episode 1 of our Big Bang review show, we want to talk a little bit more about who Paul Gilbert is. Now, we talked a lot about him coming to fame in the band Racer X, like I said, but today let's talk a little bit about Mr. Big. That's the other band that most of us know Paul Gilbert from. And again, Mr. Big sounds nothing like Racer X, except for the fact that both bands feature Paul Gilbert on guitar. Whereas Racer X is very much more of a metal band. Mr. Big, you could say, is more of a hard rock band. They got metal elements to what they do, but they also got kind of softer, more commercial sounding rock tunes. And that's the one thing I always loved about Mr. Big. You never really knew what you were going to get. And what's interesting that when you look at what Paul Gilbert did with Mr. Big, let's be honest, their biggest hit was the #1 hit song, To Be With You. An acoustic song, much closer to what people would refer to as a ballad than, say, a rock anthem, but it struck a nerve with people. I mean, it became a #1 song worldwide, really, but a #1 song in 15 countries. And that's quite an accomplishment for any band. But while most people knew Paul Gilbert as a shredder, like I said, from his Racer X days, back that's what he was known for primarily. With Mr. Big, they were a band which was much more about the songwriting. Mr. Big was unique, and because they were one of those bands that really offered up a little something for everybody. And now let's take a look at Mr. Big. Mr. Big, of course, was formed in 1988 by ex-David Lee Roth guitarist Billy Sheehan, or I should say ex-David Lee Roth bassist Billy Sheehan. And the group was, of course, rounded out by Paul Gilbert on guitar and Eric Martin on lead vocals and drummer Pat Torpey. Pat Torpey, died a couple of years ago of Parkinson's disease, and ever since then, Mr. Big been deciding if they should continue carry on or not. Well, they recently announced that 2023 is going to be their final tour. They have a new drummer they're going out with, but they pretty much decided that since the passing of Pat Torpey, this is going to be their last go around, their last time touring. So, and I must say that Paul Gilbert remained with Mr. Big up until 1999, and then that's when he decided to go and start a solo career. Now you'd think when a major guitar player like Paul Gilbert leaves your band, band might question if they're going to carry on or not, but they very much did for 10 years. They carried on with ex-Poison guitarist Richie Kotzen, who replaced Paul as the guitar player in Mr. Big. And then, of course, Mr. Big was huge in Japan. Mr. Big, well, they remained very popular in America and around the world. They were most popular in Japan, and they became almost as big as the Beatles really were in Japan. And so much to the case that Mr. Big, like they decided to do like 4 or 5 shows in Japan a year. They make bank there, man. They make a lot more money playing shows in Japan than they do here in America. But again, they're going on their farewell tour, and even though they may not be as big here in America as they are, Mr. Big, the brand, the name, it means something to people still. And a lot of people who are not necessarily metal fans, a lot of people are into Mr. Big, and it's a lot of those people that oh yeah, I know Mr. Big. Yeah, they had that song "To Be With You." Well, yeah, they're a one-hit wonder. But one thing I've always loved and respect about Mr. Big is they continue to put out new music. They have never stopped releasing new albums. I guess being the farewell tour, they maybe we hope there will be a live album in the future. Who knows? But again, now getting into today's topic, the Dio album by Paul Gilbert. I wanted to talk about the very first song on here, "Neon Nights," that I shared in part 1 of this episode. I remember the very first time I ever heard that song, "Neon Nights." All these years later, 41 years later, the song still really holds a special place in my heart to me, because that is always the very first song I think of when I think of Ronnie James Dio with Black Sabbath. And people got to remember, going back to 1980, no one knew what to really expect of a new Black Sabbath. I mean, everybody at one point thought, oh, Ozzy's no longer in Sabbath. Who are they going to get to replace those huge shoes of Ozzy's, I mean, but Ronnie James Dio was the right pick for Black Sabbath at that point. And let's be honest, Ozzy Osbourne and Ronnie James Dio could not be any different in their singing approach and the way they sing and perform. Very different performers, very different songwriters. In fact, people have said Ozzy's not really, he had to learn how to write a song. I mean, for all those years Ozzy was in Black Sabbath, everybody knows that Geezer Butler wrote most of the lyrics. And I've even heard Ozzy over years talk in interviews about the fact that he really didn't know how to write a song until he met Randy Rhoads. Randy Rhoads sat down and actually taught Ozzy Osbourne how to write a song. Can you imagine that? But again, if you take a look at all the musicians that have been in and out of Ozzy's band over the years, one thing they have all in common besides being great musicians, they're all great songwriters. I mean, he's had not just Randy Rhoads, he's had everybody like from Bob Daisy to Zach Wilde, very Phil Southson, very talented songwriters. And so Ozzy's one of those guys who's always surrounded himself with great songwriters and great musicians. And that's why Ozzy's had a successful solo career. But again, getting back to Black Sabbath, because today we're talking about Paul Gilbert's Dio album and Neon Nights specifically, very much like Heaven and Hell. Paul Gilbert, I'd be interested to talk to Paul and see why, but also Paul Gilbert starts his Dio album off with Neon Nights. And I wonder if it has anything to do with the fact that for the very first time, most of us heard Ronnie James Dio and Black Sabbath was opening track on Heaven and Hell, Neon Nights. And again, that song really holds a special place in my heart. But it's got to be all the stuff Ronnie did with Sabbath. It's got to be my favorite Ronnie James Dio Black Sabbath era song. And don't get me wrong, I love them all, but that one, because it's the very first thing most of us heard with Ronnie James Dio. I just love that song. And so much, let me tell you, the song itself is it's a great song. It stands out. The lyrics are just amazing. Now, if you liked the original Black Sabbath version, of course, you can find that on their 1980 album, Heaven and Hell. Oh, great opening track. I think it'd be a great way to kick off the concert, you know. I also urge people to go check out the 2014 Dio album. I should say Dio tribute album. It's called This Is Your Life. And also on that album from 2014, This Is Your Life, paying tribute to Dio, Anthrax does a killer version of Neon Nights. So go and check that out. And again, you gotta remember, part of the beauty when Dio joined Black Sabbath was Geezer for years had primarily been the main songwriter in Sabbath, of course, Tony Iommi, but Geezer was responsible for writing a lot of the lyrics. And typically people aren't aware of that, maybe because he's a bass player, but it was a thing he was known for, and it was a big responsibility. And I heard Geezer also talk in interviews that, hey, once Ronnie joined the band, that responsibility no longer had to fall on me, because look at what a great songwriter Ronnie was. And that is so true, you know. And let me just say, also, the thing that I love about Paul Gilbert's Dio album is it's just phenomenal. It's he doesn't tear these classics apart. He adds to it. Again, something like Neon Nights, he's not singing where you typically hear the vocal. He's playing his guitar part. So I think what I liked about it is fans are getting to hear this in a way they've never heard it before. And like I said, in a word, phenomenal. The song, the album, the guitar playing, I don't know what else to say. I mean, the album to me is awe-inspiring. It's jaw-dropping. It's really something fresh. And that's why I urge people to get Paul Gilbert's Dio album. This is it right here. And I urge you all to check back here. In episode 3, we're going to be talking about more of the songs on Paul Gilbert's Dio album. So check it out. I'll see you again all real soon. Bye for now. Take care.